Let's talk about solving a quadratic by completing the square. So here's a quadratic in standard form. The first thing we want to do is take this c term and move it over to the other side. That gives us this. And then we factor out this a term. So we're factoring out a 2 from each one of these. So we have 2x squared minus 2x. So this times this is that, and this times this is that. This comes because you take half of this b term, and half of -2 is -1. You're going to square it and add it here and add it over there. Well, the reason I wrote -1 squared here is half of -2 is -1. I'm going to square it in a minute. When you square that, you get 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So I'm actually adding 2 here. That's why I'm adding 2 over here. Because I have this equal sign, I want the left side to equal the right side. And if I added 2 here, I need to add 2 over there to keep it balanced. And then we factor this part. So this factored, I use x because x is the variable that's involved in this. And this number is going to go right here. The fact of the matter is x minus 1 squared ends up being x squared minus 2x plus 1. If you were to FOIL that out, if you were to write x minus 1 times x minus 1 and multiply it together, you would get that. Of course, I still have this 2 out here. And when you add those together, you get 1. So we're at this point. Completing the square means we're getting it so that we have a perfect square on the left side. And we don't quite have that because we have this. So the next step is going to be dividing both sides by 2. That way the 2's cancel, and I end up with this. Now I can take the square root of both sides. So the square root of this and the square root of that. The square root of something squared is that thing, so it's going to be x minus 1 because these, to some extent, cancel one another out, and I get x minus 1. Of course, whenever you take the square root of both sides of an equation, you have to put plus or minus in the answer. The square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 2 looks like that. So this is our answer, but it's not in simplest form because something's not in simplest form as long as you have a radical in the denominator. So if you come up here, I'm going to simplify 1 over the square root of 2 by rationalizing the denominator. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. So 1 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2, and the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. So there's my final answer in simplest form. So this process is called completing the square. We took something that was not a perfect square, and we made it into something that was a perfect square. And the benefit of that is that we could just take the square root of both sides in order to solve it. So this is solving a quadratic by completing the square.